Hey, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and I'm coming to you guys with my Week 2 battle for the BBL. We are going up against Max Rapture, coach of the Tasmanian Toxicroaks. I'm not sure if it's spelled with a Z or with an S. I'm really not sure, but I suppose it's not ultimately that important. What is important is that you guys go down to the description below and give Max a look. His channel is much bigger than mine, so there's a decent chance that you guys are already familiar with him. But if you're not, make sure you go familiarize yourself. And also, while you're in the description below, make sure you check out the links for all the other coaches. Hopefully, I don't sound too awful in this video. I've spent the past week or so sick as a dog. It's not quite the flu. I don't have any vomiting or extreme fever. I had a fever on one day during the week. I'm feeling a little bit better now. I've been taking a ton of medicine, so hopefully that helps all this sound okay. It was really bad the day we had to battle Max and me. It was like one of the worst days that I felt, and due to time zones, we had to battle at 2 a.m. So I'm my nose is leaking like a faucet, and I'm coughing up a storm, and I'm staying up trying to play this battle. So hopefully this battle was worth it. I'll let you guys, of course, be the judge of that once we get to the end of this video. So let's go ahead and break down this matchup here, and then I'll hop on into the battle. So Max has on his team Rayquaza, Mega Mawile, Zapdos, Slowbro, Amoonguss, Umbreon, Nidoking, Talonflame, Hitmontop, Steelix, and Tauros. So he definitely has some offensive threats. Mawile in particular is really scary. Plus 2 Sucker Punch does a lot of damage to almost everything on my team. I do have Arceus to basically resist the Sucker Punch, and I can do a ton of damage back with Fire Blast. But I don't really want to put myself into a situation where I'm relying on Fire Blast to hit, so hopefully that does not happen. Nidoking is probably the second scariest thing, just because it's such a good wall breaker versus my team. I don't really have a lot of walls on my team to begin with, so it can just really tear through my team if I'm not careful. Talonflame, I think, is the next scariest. I don't have a ton of defensive switch-ins to Talonflame. Obviously, I have Heatran, which is pretty good, and I have Garchomp, which can whittle it down. But Garchomp, in particular, I think is suspect to bulky Will-O-Wisp sets. So if he wants to bring Will-O-Wisp plus Roost, that could beat a lot of variants of Garchomp. So I'm hoping that he doesn't bring that. And he could always pack the Natural Gift Ground Tech for Heatran. I just really have to be careful and play around that very safely. Besides that, I think the main feature of Max's team is his bulk. So he does have a Regenerator Core with Slowbro and Amoonguss that is going to be pretty difficult to deal with. He has Umbreon, which is, and I mean no offense by this, one of the most cancerous mons in the Draft League metagame, just for its ability to switch in on virtually anything. Even super effective hits it can take most of the time. I did some calcs with Scizor versus Umbreon, and unless I'm choice banded, I can't do a ton of damage to that thing. An adamant U-turn does only 60% at most to a Fizz Def Umbreon, so it's really tough to deal with that mon. Zapdos, definitely one of my favorite mons in League format to use. It's definitely infamous for certain sets like Subtoxic and things like that. Of course, it's certainly way more versatile than that, but it's just something to be aware of. So dealing with those sorts of mons is going to be the hardest part of this matchup, I think. There are certain mons that I don't expect to come, Rayquaza I think is kind of weak in the matchup just because I have a couple of great ways to revenge kill it with the Piloswine and potentially Scarf Chomp. I've got Scizor with Bullet Punch, and I can resist the extreme speed and things like that. Steelix is almost certainly not coming. Hitmontop is unmon, so there's a decent chance that stays on the bench. Anything else I think is pretty much fair game. With that said, I'm already a little bit long into this, so let me just go through this team builder as quick as I can, and we'll go straight to the battle. So I have a very simple Arceus set, sub-CM once again. We swapped out Sludge Bomb for Fire Blast this week. Otherwise, it's the exact same set as last week. Same speed investment. This special attack, I think, allows us to one-shot Mawile if it's uninvested after Rocks. So Then we put the rest into Spadef just to make it as easy as possible to set up on things like Slowbro and Amoonguss. To help us get into good positions with Arceus, we once again have a Baton Pass Mega Medicham. We have High Jump Kick instead of something like Drain Punch this week. Drain Punch would have been really nice for like Protect Umbreon, because that's so freaking annoying trying to go for High Jump Kick versus a Mon that you know is likely to have Protect. But I needed the maximum amount of damage output possible on this thing, so that way I can hit Mawile as hard as possible, assuming that it's not already set up. Because if it's not set up, I can survive a Sucker Punch. If it is set up, I cannot. Then Ice Punch is there for things like Amoonguss, Zapdos. Thunder Punch is there for Slowbro. So yeah, like his switch into this thing is 100% Slowbro. If I can Baton Pass out on the predicted Slowbro switch in, that can put me into Arceus, and I can either get a free Judgment off or I can get off a free sub. Because he really can't deal that well with any variant of Arceus. He can't afford much special attack investment to try and break subs on Arceus because he needs as much Fizdef as possible to deal with Medicham. Next we have a Scarf Chomp. This is going to be my way to revenge kill a +1 Rayquaza. It's also a good way to revenge kill Talonflame. We do guaranteed kill with Rock Slide versus that thing, assuming that it doesn't have much bulk investment, and I do think that we take out a Rayquaza after Rocks with our Dragon Claw with his attack investment. We outspeed and max speed Zapdos. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is. This is like my revenge killer. In certain situations, we can potentially sweep late game with this thing, but he has a couple of flying types, and he has his Mawile, so we kind of have to get into the right situation in order to sweep. Next, we have a Darkinium Z Heatran. This is a trapping set meant to eliminate Slowbro, because in addition to being a switch into Medicham, Slowbro is also a pretty fair switch into Heatran, but with this set, I can very easily eliminate Slowbro. And we're going with Darkinium Z over something like Grassinium Z for the Bloom Doom, because he could anticipate that Z Solar Beam and Rock Protect on his Slowbro, which would make it fairly easy for him to survive, because then he can like Protect, not take any damage, or not take much damage from my Z Solar Beam, and then either heal up or go for Scald or whatever, and I have no way to hit him on the second turn. But with Dark Pulse, instead of Solar Beam, I do have a follow-up play. I can hit for about 55% damage with the Dark Pulse to a Fizdef Slowbro, which is of course what I'm expecting, as I explained. So Magma Storm damage on the switch in, plus a couple turns of being trapped in Magma Storm, plus Darkinium Z. Even if he protects through that, I should be able to put him in range of dying to a Dark Pulse. Besides that, I have Ancient Power for Talonflame, and then Taunt for mainly Umbreon, because I hate freaking Umbreon. I can also Taunt and Magma Storm that thing to trap it, so that's pretty nice. Next we have actually a offensive Piloswine, which is pretty nice in the matchup. We do Speed Tie with Mawile, and he's probably not going to go max speed Jolly, because why would he speed creep or try to speed tie a Piloswine? That doesn't really make sense. So I'm hoping we can get into a situation where I can expect him, or he's expecting to outspeed me, and he goes for Iron Head or Play Rough or whatever, and we catch him by surprise and hit him with a fast Earthquake. Also wanted this thing to deal with Rayquaza, to deal good damage to Zapdos, Nidoking, things like that. I could have put Stealth Rocks on this instead of Toxic, but I felt like I would rather have this thing with Toxics, that way I can hit Slowbro and Umbreon. I could have put Toxic on Garchomp instead of Rocks to do the same thing, but I don't know, it just felt more comfortable this way. Then last but not least, I have a physically defensive Iapapa Berry Ampharos. Looking at the team, like I said, I lose pretty badly to a bulky Talonflame, like a Sub-Wisp, or not Sub-Wisp, but like a Wisp Roost. And so Ampharos is pretty much my fail-safe way to deal with that. This also does pretty good damage to physically defensive Slowbro. It's like the only thing that I can kind of switch in on Slowbro, even though I'm not Spadef. Like I can at least switch in on that and then threaten it with the electric type move. I don't think Steelix is coming, so I don't have to worry about that thing. It's a ground type. Nidoking, like I said, I am expecting. So I just have to be very, very careful playing around that. I put enough speed on this thing to outspeed Umbreon. I thought for a little bit that it would be good to have like a slow Ampharos for a slow U-turn. But, it just for the opportunity to potentially 2-hit KO the Umbreon, I thought that was worth it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the team. It only took 10 minutes for me to get through that. Now let's flash on over to the battle. So as you can see, Max has brought Zapdos, Amoonguss, Tauros, Rayquaza, Slowbro, and Talonflame. So a little surprised not to see Umbreon. I thought Umbreon would come because it's sort of his best switch into Dark-type moves. I guess, at the same time, Umbreon doesn't have any way to threaten back a sub-CM Arceus. It can taunt, but that's the only thing. But even that said, Mawile is not on the roster either, so he has no Dark Resist. So that's kind of what spelled disaster for my opponent last week. He did not bring a Dark Resist, and I was able to sweep with Calm Mind Arceus. So I'm going to be looking to get myself into a good position with that once again. Other than that, the Slowbros here makes perfect sense. It's the check to Medicham. Amoonguss is here. Not that surprising. It should be a good switch in to my Primarina in theory. I can kind of switch in on my Garchomp. It depends on what sort of spread he is. And then offensively, Talonflame, I said, was very good. Tauros is actually a pretty good sleeper pick for him. It can potentially threaten a lot of my team. It's nice that I can revenge kill it with Arceus pretty much 100% of the time, so I'm going to be trying to put myself in that position. Then Zapdos, Rayquaza, just sort of his best mons that he has on his team. So in terms of lead matchups, I'm pretty sure I lead with Ampharos, because he doesn't have a ground type, so I can get a pretty free Volt Switch here. He led with Talonflame in week 1, so if he wants to lead off with that, leading with my Ampharos puts me into a pretty good position. Besides, I guess, Tauros and probably Rayquaza, there's not really a bad matchup leading with Ampharos. Both Tauros and Rayquaza can smack me with pretty powerful Earthquakes, depending upon what item they have. If they're a Life Orb, then I should die to Earthquake, but if they're not, then I could potentially live one. But I'm not going to stick around to try and find out if I can live or not. I'll make a switch into something else, probably like Piloswine. So yeah, that's going to be my thought process there. We're going to hop into this game and click play. Wish good luck, have fun to Max Rapture, and we're going to see how this one plays out. So yeah, like I said, game plan. Try and use either my Ampharos to Volt Switch on an incoming Amoonguss, or use my Medicham to Baton Pass on an incoming Slowbro. Try to get Arceus in both of those cases, and try to set up sub and start Calm Minding. So he leads off with his Zapdos, which is okay with me. There's nothing that this thing can do to one-shot me. Even if he Toxics me or something like that, I do have the Heal Bell in the back, so I can potentially heal up later. But he actually goes for Light Screen, so this is definitely spooky because it can get him into some situations where he can start setting up, which I don't like. I go for the Icicle Crash as he smartly goes for U-Turn. So he's got Light Screen, U-Turn. He almost certainly has Roost. So his last attacking move, I guess, is Thunderbolt. It could be Reflect, but that'd be crazy not to have any sort of stab coverage. But that does mean that something like my Garchomp can deal with that thing pretty freely. So anyway, he goes into his Talonflame. I do a pretty good chunk of damage, but it does show that the Talonflame has at least a little bit of HP investment. He's going to throw up the Bulk Up here. So this is definitely a spooky set. If he's bringing set up, he has to have something for my Heatran here. So I'm going to try and scout for something like Natural Gift Ground. And that's exactly what he throws off here. And so even if you wanted to go for Brave Bird or something, my Garchomp can definitely take it. And then I can Revenge Kill it with Rock Slide. Because even at +1 defense, this Talonflame should not be able to survive. I actually throw off Stealth Rocks here because I'm not expecting him to stay in. Because, yeah, I guess he has, Brave Bird. Like I said, that's not going to do a ton of damage to me. He actually throws off the Roost. So he's thinking that he can go for Roost and, basically take a Rock Slide better. Which is a decent idea in theory. So I go for those rocks. Unfortunately, I'm scarfed into it, and now I'm forced to go into my Ampharos. But, the nice thing is that he's not boosting on his Spadef side, so I can throw off a Thunderbolt here, and it should do a ton of damage. I should have just gone for the Volt Switch to try and keep up the momentum, but I elected to just go for the Thunderbolt. He brings in his Amoonguss, takes doesn't take it, it takes it pretty well, but it definitely seems to be more physically leaning than especially leaning. especially defensive leaning. And so because of that, I'm thinking that this is probably not Assault Vest. The reason that I decided to leave my Ampharos in is because at this point I decided that this was the least useful thing, and if he was going to Spore, I'd like my Ampharos to go to sleep. And so, like at this point, because he's burned his natural gift ground, I can rely on Heatran to deal with Talonflame. So that's why Ampharos was going to stay in there. He switched out of his Amoonguss into his Slowbro. I thought he might switch out to try and preserve his Amoonguss, and so I go for Volt Switch, get the Slowbro into a bad situation where it's now in versus my Arceus. I could go for the Sub or the Calm Mind here, but I just decided to throw off the Judgment. It's still a little bit early, and he does have this Talonflame to pretty easily break the Substitute if I need. And so I do end up getting the knockout on that, and Tauros comes in here. And so he actually shows the Intimidate, and Max did mention to me before we started playing that he had a Misgen on his team. I'm not sure if this one was it, but knowing that this thing is Intimidate and not Sheer Force gives me a little bit of confidence to stay in here and boost with Calm Mind, because even if he's Scarf, Scarf can't really two-shot me with any move. Like Rock Climb does not do a lot of damage to me from an Intimidate Tauros. He ends up showing that he is Life Orb with Retaliate, and the Retaliate does do a decent chunk of damage, but because he's not Scarfed, I can now just kill it with Judgment. He's going to go into his Rayquaza here, take Rock's damage, and basically his last chance is to hope that this E-Speed can somehow take me out. I don't have any HP or physical defense investment this week, but Arceus is just so naturally bulky anyway that it takes it with ease, and we're able to throw off a Judgment and take out this Rayquaza. So that just leaves Zapdos, Slowbro, and Amoonguss left on the roster. So basically, the only thing I need to do is hit a Fire Blast versus Amoonguss, and Arceus is going to get 6 kills. I could go for Judgment versus the Amoonguss. Like I was saying, it seems like it's more physically defensive than specially defensive, but because I don't know the exact spread, I don't want to risk the roll. It seems like the chance to hit the Fire Blast is higher than the chance to get a roll versus some sort of mixed defensive Amoonguss. So it does come in here. I do click the Fire Blast, and I am going to connect and do a good chunk of damage to that Amoonguss, enough to knock it out, of course. And then last but not least is the Zapdos. Zapdos is going to come in here, take Rock's damage. I don't know exactly what the spread on this thing is, but obviously at this point, I'm just going to throw off the Judgment and hope that it kills. If it doesn't, then I'm going to go into Garchomp and throw off a Dragon Claw or something like that. But with the +1 boost, we are going to be able to take out this Zapdos, and we're going to earn ourselves a nice 6-0 W over Max Rapture. So I feel pretty bad for Max. This is now his second straight loss. He's now starting the season 0-2. This battle is definitely not reflective of his skill as a battler. He's done very well in other leagues in the past. He and I shared a league together, P4G Next Generation, and he definitely had a better performance in that than when he showed today. So I'm hoping that he can bounce back in the next couple of weeks in the BBL. But for our standings here, this is going to bump us to a nice 2-0 with a +10 differential, which I'm pretty pleased about. Because the next 2 weeks for BBL are going to be very tough. We have 2 very hard opponents. First up is Matt O'Shea and his Montreal Milotics. He and I go back a bit. We've played in a few different leagues together, including P4G Next Generation, where he totally body bagged me. He's also, from back in the day, was one of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links buddies, which I don't play anymore, but we had fun connecting over that. We have a very tough matchup versus him. He's got Protean Greninja, he's got Dialga, he's got a bunch of scary things. He's got Mega Aerodactyl, which is one of my least favorite mons to play versus. So that's our Week 3 matchup, and then Week 4 we're going up against none other than Gypsy King. He has a very terrifying squad as well, featuring Lando T, Magearna, Ho-Oh, Weavile, Ferrothorn, things like that. So there's a decent chance that we end up getting two L's in the next 2 weeks. So having these first 2 wins and having this nice cushion of differential is going to be nice because it's going to offset what I'm anticipating to happen in the next 2 weeks in terms of wins and losses. So Very pleased with that. Very pleased with Arceus. It now has 11 kills in 2 weeks, which is totally bonkers. I've never had any Mon perform like that. So we're going to see if Arceus can continue its streak of just totally punishing my opponents. If you are a big fan of Arceus and a big fan of the Oriolus performance so far this season, make sure you drop a like on this video and leave a sub so you can stay up to date on the next week's game, and you can stay up to date on all my latest and greatest Pokemon and gaming content. So until the next time, I will see you guys later.